My name is Margaret Doyle, and tonight I stand in a ballroom glittering with chandeliers that throw light like broken glass across polished floors. I'm 67, a widow, a woman who spends her days tending roses and tomatoes in a quiet Cleveland garden. That is the version most people know. The neighbors wave when I'm pruning hedges. The grocer asks about my heirloom carrots. They see only the surface, a gentle retiree who traded ambition for soil. What they don't see is the other life I folded away like a pressed suit, meetings that stretched past midnight, contracts signed with a trembling hand, the long climb of a company that once existed only as notes on a legal pad. At my daughter's wedding, all of that history sat silent under my skin as the music faded and her groom, Ethan Pierce, took the microphone. His tux gleamed, his grin spread wide enough to slice. He thanked friends, bragged about mentors, and then, with a flourish, practiced too many times in the mirror, pointed at me. "This," he said, voice sharp with self-satisfaction, "is Emily's mom. She doesn't really work. Keeps a garden. Simple pleasures, right?" The laughter he expected didn't come. A few polite chuckles scattered, but mostly the air stiffened. Emily's smile faltered, her knuckles whitening around the bouquet. My own chest burned. Yet I held still, remembering how silence can weigh more than any rebuttal. Then a chair scraped. Mr. Caldwell, Ethan's boss, rose from the head table. His hair had thinned, but his presence had not. He walked toward me without hesitation, extended his hand and said loudly, "Mrs. Doyle, it's been far too long. This woman co-founded Sterling Innovations. If your groom works for us, he works in the house she built." Gasps broke loose like wind in wheat. Emily's lips parted in shock. Ethan's grin cracked, exposing the hollowness beneath. I shook Caldwell's hand, letting the truth hang in the room heavier than any toast. The band forgot their cue. For one suspended moment, everyone breathed the same revelation. Silence is not invisibility. It is legacy waiting to be named. The quartet eventually remembered its duty and stumbled back into Pachelbel, bowing strings in a desperate attempt to glue the evening together. Guests whispered into their champagne flutes, pretending to admire the flower arrangements while their eyes darted toward me, then away, as if I had turned into a painting suddenly worth studying but too complicated to interpret. Ethan still clutched the microphone. His smile looked pasted on, lips stretched thin over panic. "Well, folks," he said with a laugh that cracked in the middle. "Guess you got a history lesson with your entree." The joke thudded onto the carpet. He rushed into thank yous, donors, friends, a college buddy, stringing words like beads on a necklace that kept snapping. When the applause finally trickled, it was polite but hollow, the kind you give someone who has overstayed his welcome. I watched Emily descend from the dais, veil fluttering slightly with each step. I reached for her elbow. Her bouquet brushed against my sleeve, leaving damp petals on the navy wool of my suit. She looked at me the way a child looks at the ocean for the first time, dazzled and frightened. "Mom," she whispered beneath the polite clinking of forks, "why didn't you ever tell me?" I thought of all the stories I might have offered, the nights eating cold soup in a rented office, the days fighting to secure a payroll, the arguments that left me gripping a silver pen until it dented. I thought of showing her the calluses ambition had left behind, but I only smoothed a curl from her forehead and said softly, "Tonight is yours. We'll talk another time." Mr. Caldwell appeared beside us then, carrying 2 glasses of water as if offering truce. "Emily," he said warmly, "your mother made 1,000 impossible days ordinary. Congratulations." He left us with that simple truth, no embellishment. The servers began their rhythm again, salads landing with careful precision. I accepted a plate not meant for me and said nothing. Across the room, a boy spun in suspenders until he fell, laughter bursting from him like music. For a moment, it eased the sting. Ethan returned, crouched so our eyes met. His grin was stapled in place. "Quite a surprise, huh? Small world." "No," I said evenly. "It feels larger." His gaze skittered. "We'll talk later," he muttered, already scanning the crowd for safer ground. That night on the terrace was not the first time Ethan's mask had slipped. I had seen it from the very beginning, though back then it arrived in smaller doses. Like faint cracks in porcelain, you can't unsee once the light catches them. The first dinner was at a family-style Italian place on the west side, the kind with red-checked tablecloths and candles dripping down into Chianti bottles. He took the menu before anyone else could speak and ordered brusquely for the table. "Trust me," he said, snapping it shut like a deal was sealed. Emily's eyes shone with admiration, as though decisiveness equaled strength. When the minestrone arrived, steam rising in fragrant curls, he dipped his spoon, smirked, and said, "Basic. Anyone could toss this together from a backyard garden." Emily laughed a little too quickly, her laugh thin with effort. I tasted the soup, herbs rich and familiar, and thought of nights long ago when I lived off bowls like this while recalculating payroll on a legal pad. Soup had been survival, not punchline. He spent the rest of that evening cataloging names, reciting his network like a rosary. Many were names I had once negotiated with in rooms that smelled of stale coffee and ambition, though he had no idea. He praised his own charisma, his vision, his gift for optics. Emily's fork hovered above her plate, forgotten, while her smile worshipped every syllable. I asked him how he pictured himself in 5 years. His answer was a long speech about recognition, stock options, brand presence. Not once did he mention Emily. Not once did he mention family or respect. That pattern became his signature. At brunch, he corrected waiters loudly. At cookouts, he ridiculed potato salad as pedestrian while boasting about bottles of wine he could barely pronounce. Emily, eager to belong to his world, began echoing his language, ROI, scalability, leverage, until affection itself sounded like a quarterly report. I chose silence, not out of fear but calculation. Silence lets a person draw their own portrait in public, and portraits, eventually, reveal the truth. I knew the day would come when Ethan's frame collapsed. I just didn't know it would happen beneath chandeliers with 100 witnesses. Weeks before the wedding, I opened the cedar wardrobe in my bedroom, the one that still held scents of lavender sachets and thyme. My hand brushed past coats and sweaters until it landed on a garment bag at the very end. I unzipped it slowly, and the navy suit revealed itself like a secret I had been keeping from the world. The last time I wore it, the trading floor had erupted in cheers as Sterling Innovations went public. I had signed documents with a silver fountain pen that still bore the groove of my thumb, proof of years gripping through tension. That pen rested on my desk now, dented from negotiations that had drained me, yet defined me. I lifted it once, rolling the cool barrel between my fingers, and remembered nights when I wrote payroll numbers over and over, praying they would stretch far enough. The pad beside it was yellowed, pages curling, ink fading to a tired blue. Some sheets carried columns of calculations. Others were scrawled with sketches for early prototypes. Others still bore the names of employees who had chosen to believe in me when I had nothing but vision to offer. They were not nostalgia pieces. They were artifacts of survival, markers of sacrifice, fragments of a life Ethan dismissed with a shrug. One evening, Emily curled on the couch, scrolling through bridal checklists, hair tumbling over her shoulder. I almost reached for the pen, almost told her how it had steadied my hand when deals threatened to slip away. I nearly showed her the suit and explained why I had hidden it away. But her phone buzzed with Ethan's name, and she jumped up to discuss table arrangements. My story folded back into silence. So when the gilded invitation arrived, embossed and perfect, I knew my answer. I pressed the suit, polished its buttons, and set it on a hanger where morning light could touch it. It would not be rebellion, it would be testimony. A quiet declaration that I was not invisible, that legacy could sit at a wedding table as surely as roses sat in my garden. The week of the wedding turned into a pageant of schedules and edicts, every detail filtered through Ethan's need for control. He sent spreadsheets of color palettes to Emily's inbox, attached mood boards of flower arrangements, even dictated which side of the ballroom should be photographed first. To him, marriage was less a union than a production, one more stage to polish his brand. One afternoon, he called a meeting at Emily's apartment as though it were a corporate briefing. Swatches of ivory and champagne lay across the table. He held them up like commandments. "Uniformity photographs better," he declared, sweeping his hand with the flair of a CEO unveiling quarterly results. Then he turned to me, his smile stretched tight. "Practiced. Mrs. Doyle, we'll need you in blush silk or pale beige. Something that blends. We don't want distractions in the photos." Emily leaned forward quickly, voice brittle with forced cheer. "Mom, maybe we could shop together. There's a boutique Ethan likes downtown." I folded my hands in my lap and met her eyes with gentleness. "Thank you, sweetheart, but I already have something to wear." Ethan tilted his head, his grin stiffening. "What kind of something?" "A suit," I said. "Navy." Silence flickered like static. He laughed too loudly. "Might be heavy for June, don't you think?" I didn't answer. I had learned long ago that explanations only fed the hunger of doubt. Emily's hand brushed mine under the table, a plea for peace. I gave it a reassuring squeeze, promising strength without words. Later, in my kitchen, I poured tea and thought about the word distraction. Years ago, a man in a boardroom called me exactly that when I questioned his rosy projections. He brushed me aside, but those numbers collapsed within months. That so-called distraction had saved the company. I pressed the suit again that evening. The fabric held memory, not rebellion. If anyone chose to call it a distraction now, then at least they would finally be looking. The wedding day arrived gilded in roses and polished silver. The ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, every table dressed in gold-rimmed china and folded ivory napkins like origami. A quartet in the corner played pachelbel with earnest precision, while guests adjusted corsages and snapped photos for proof of attendance. Emily floated down the aisle radiant, her lace gown catching light like 1,000 small suns. Pride tightened my throat. I slipped quietly into my seat, the navy suit anchoring me like armor. I felt the weight of the fountain pen in my purse, not because I planned to use it, but because it reminded me who I had once been. Dinner ended. Glasses clinked, and Ethan rose with the microphone. His tux gleamed, his grin hungry for applause. He launched into their love story, polished until it gleamed like glass, but fragile underneath. He bragged about his career trajectory, his plans for the future, the bright path they would walk together. Each pause collected polite claps, like coins dropped into an empty jar. Then came the flourish. His hand swept toward me. "And this is Emily's mom. She doesn't really have a career these days. Keeps a garden. Simple pleasures, right?" The laugh he expected never came. A few nervous titters scattered, but mostly the air congealed. Emily's smile stiffened, her fingers tightening around the bouquet until petals bent. Heat flooded my chest, but I remained still, knowing silence could cut sharper than any retort. A chair scraped at the head table. Mr. Caldwell stood, his presence commanding without effort. He strode across the room, eyes fixed on me, and extended his hand. "Mrs. Doyle," he said, his voice carrying. "It's been far too long." He turned toward the room. "For those who don't know, this woman co-founded Sterling Innovations. If your groom works for us, he works in the house she built." Gasps rippled. Heads swiveled. Emily's lips parted in disbelief. Ethan's grin shattered, the confidence leaking out like air from a punctured balloon. I didn't need words. The suit, the pen, the pad of calculations long ago, they all spoke for me. The quartet faltered, and for one suspended moment, the truth hung heavier than the chandeliers above us. The ballroom swelled with chatter again, but the air never fully healed. Guests tried to stitch the evening back together with nervous jokes and fresh pours of champagne. The band leaned into jazz standards, louder than before, as if volume could mask what had just unraveled. I slipped outside onto the terrace, seeking air cooler than the chandelier glow. The city stretched before me, lights scattered across the lake like fallen stars. I gripped the railing, my pulse still echoing from Caldwell's words. The door creaked, and Emily appeared. Her veil trailed behind her, trembling in the night breeze. She closed the door softly, shutting out the music. "Mom," she whispered, voice raw, "why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't you say you were part of all that?" I kept my eyes on the water. "Because it wasn't your burden. It was mine. You deserved to grow without the weight of my history." She came closer, bouquet wilting in her hands. "He made you look small in front of everyone, and I let him. I even laughed before. When he mocked things I didn't understand, I wanted him to seem impressive. I wanted us to look perfect." I turned to her, really seeing her, the way I used to when she practiced piano and waited for my approval. "He made himself small tonight. Emily, not you." Her eyes glistened. "I don't want to confuse love with performance anymore. I don't want my life to be a stage." "Then don't," I said gently. "Love that demands applause isn't love. It's theater." For a long moment we stood together in silence, the city humming below us, the faint horn of a boat drifting across the lake. Inside, glasses clinked, but out here truth carried its own music. Emily's shoulders straightened. "I need to think about what comes next," she murmured. "Thinking is the start," I told her. "Acting is the rest." She pressed her forehead against mine briefly, then stepped back, veil whispering against my cheek. When she turned to go inside, I knew something in her had shifted. The girl who walked out had been dazzled by optics. The woman who returned carried questions that mattered more. 2 days after the wedding, the phone rang while I was pruning roses in the backyard. The number flashing across the screen belonged to Ethan. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity tugged harder. His voice was tight, pitched higher than usual. "Why did you write only Emily's name on the check? Do you have any idea how that looks? People will think—" I wiped soil from my hands onto my jeans, let him spill his outrage. When his words finally tangled into silence, I answered evenly. "It looks like I gave my daughter a gift. Beyond that, people's opinions are their own mirrors." He sputtered, then regrouped. "It's disrespectful, see, you're undermining us before we've even started." "Respect," I said calmly, "isn't a name on a piece of paper. It's a habit. It's how you introduce your family in public. It's how you treat waiters at brunch. It's how you look at a woman when you think no one else is watching." On the other end, silence spread wide. I imagined him pacing, jaw clenching, searching for rebuttals that wouldn't come. At last he muttered something about being busy and hung up without a goodbye. I stood among the roses, the phone still warm in my hand, and felt no triumph, only certainty. I hadn't embarrassed him. He had done that himself. My only act was refusing to decorate his story with my silence any longer. Later that evening, as dusk painted the garden in violet shades, Emily texted me, "Mom, thank you for the gift," and the words, "I've been thinking about them all day." I typed back slowly, wanting every word to weigh what it meant. Good. Thinking is the first step. Living them is next. When I set the phone down, a peace settled over me, quiet but steady. The roses bowed under the last light of day, their petals soft as if nodding in agreement. For the first time in years, I felt the boundaries of my life firm and clear, drawn not with anger, but with resolve. Stories from the wedding spread through Sterling faster than emails on a Monday morning. No one needed exaggeration. The truth was sharp enough. The young man who mocked his mother-in-law as unemployed had been corrected by the company's own CEO. In the break rooms, they laughed quietly. In meetings, they raised eyebrows. Ethan's charm no longer landed the way it once had. Caldwell phoned me a few days later. His voice carried the same gravel I remembered from late-night strategy calls. "Margaret, I didn't mean to humiliate him," he said, "but I couldn't let the slight stand." "You did what you've always done," I told him. "You named the truth." He chuckled. "Your daughter has grit. I saw it in her eyes. She'll be fine, with him or without him." The words lingered long after the line went dead. That Sunday, Emily came by with groceries. She set them on my counter and, almost defiantly, announced, "I've opened a separate account. I need to stand on my own." Her voice trembled, but her gaze held steady. I handed her a cutting board and smiled. "Independence isn't rejection, sweetheart. It's oxygen." She chopped an onion, blinking hard. "I used to think perfection was safety. But safety is knowing I can stand even if he stumbles." I touched her shoulder. "That's a truth worth keeping." Later, alone in the garden, I pulled out my old legal pad. Under porch light, I wrote a single sentence across a clean page. "Silence is not weakness. It is legacy in disguise." The pen moved smoothly, certain at last. I closed the pad, breathing the night air, and felt peace root itself as firmly as the roses at my feet. By September, Emily came to my house carrying a grocery bag as if it were a declaration. She laid vegetables on the counter and tied her hair back. "I want to cook," she said, fumbling for a knife. I watched her slice onions, her motions clumsy but determined. Steam rose from the pan, fragrant and sharp. "I told him I won't be treated like I'm invisible anymore," she murmured. "He didn't fight me, but he didn't apologize either. Still, I needed to hear myself say it." I set plates on the table. "That's what matters. Speaking your truth is how you learn to stand." She looked at me, eyes watery from onion tears and something deeper. For the first time, I saw not the dazzled bride, but a woman drawing her own lines. Weeks later, Caldwell invited me to a luncheon honoring early pioneers of Sterling. I almost declined, but Emily insisted. So I went, sat among faces from another lifetime. Applause greeted me, not for vanity, but for history. Across the room, Ethan lifted a glass toward me, awkward, almost pleading. I didn't return the gesture. Silence was answer enough. That night, Emily leaned against my shoulder in the garden. "I won't shrink anymore," she whispered. "You won't," I told her. "Not while legacy runs in your veins." Autumn came quietly, painting the garden in copper and rust. Leaves drifted onto the stone path like soft applause, each one reminding me how endings can also be beginnings. I trimmed roses in the cool air while Emily sat nearby with a book across her knees, her veil long since folded away. She watched me for a while before asking, "Do you regret not telling me sooner? About Sterling? About who you were?" I laid the shears on the bench and considered. No. Some truths have to be discovered, not delivered. If I'd forced the story, it would have been mine alone. Now it belongs to you, too. Her eyes softened. She closed the book and leaned closer. I understand now. Legacy isn't something you inherit by name. It's what you choose to live. I smiled, hearing in her words the echo of my own journey. The pen, the suit, the worn legal pad, they could rest now, no longer symbols of silence but of strength passed forward. As the sun dropped behind the trees, I breathed in the earth and roses. For the first time in years, I felt not hidden, not erased, but whole, complete in both the silence and the voice it had finally found. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.